Hi everybody, welcome to SunTV. My name is Barbara Yu Hui Chai, reporting from New York State Assemblyman Office of the 40th District. Today I'm going to interview Assemblyman Mr. Ron King. Mr. Ron King has been representing the constituency since 2012, and he has introduced the Bill 9899 to eliminate business licensing fee for the cryptocurrency industry in the New York State.
I grew up in this neighborhood in Flushing in Queens. So for me, it's a tremendous honor that I can come back to the neighborhood that I grew up in and give the people that I feel very passionate about a voice in local and state government. So I'm very proud of the work that I do. And I'm in my 6th year in the state legislature. When I was first elected, I was the only Asian American at the time out of 213 statewide elected officials. Now there's 2 of us. My chief of staff, my former chief of staff, was elected to the state legislature last year, representing parts of Manhattan. But again, for me, it's all about helping people and delivering resources to the immigrant community here in Queens. I've been looking at the cryptocurrency space for a couple of years. Because there's been so much interest by investors and also people in finance who are very smart at what they do, and they're not just focused on Bitcoin, but the actual technology of blockchain that had advanced Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was the best example of what blockchain could have done. And once I started wrapping my head around what blockchain really represented, I was immediately struck by the potential of how transformative this technology can be for all aspects of our communities. And I realized that a few years ago, the New York regulators had attempted to come down on this technology, focusing on the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and acted very much impulsively toward this industry. So that's why I felt compelled to dive into this even more. And I'm still learning. Every day I'm still learning a lot. It's a very complicated and complex, I think, field. There's so many amazing and smart people behind this. So every day I'm having conversations with people from Singapore, South Africa, London, just trying to observe as much as possible of this technology, because I think there's so much potential behind it. Well, as a state legislature, I represent District 40, but I also represent the interests for all people around the state, everyone in the state of New York. And as particularly for me, when you think about New York City, the capital, the financial capital of the world, we should be at the forefront of these discussions, not at the back end. And we are way behind places like London and Singapore that have taken so many steps forward in working with the industry and coming up with long-term solutions and short-term solutions to figure this out. And I think for me, that's why we're focused on a different framework, walking away from the bill license and replacing it with the sandbox approach that other countries have adopted too. In the coming months, I plan on meeting with some of the regulators from Singapore and other parts of the world to figure out, can we make this framework even better? And I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to working with other groups because we need the industry to come in and we need to give them some flexibility to grow while we have proper monitoring place to make sure that investors are not being defrauded and the people are doing a good job in that space. So we've made significant amendments. So there's the latest version of our bill. We're recommending the regulators in that time period, the next few years, to look at different approaches to offer a long-term solution, whether it's a custodian approach or a depository approach, because the actual technology of blockchain behind cryptocurrency is very secure, almost unhackable. But the weak points have been the exchanges, because a lot of the values and assets have been centrally protected, becoming hackable and becoming a weak point for people to come in and steal or whatever the funds in that exchange. So as a state, as a the regulators don't have the capacity, to be quite frank, to be monitoring and auditing these exchanges. They don't have the personnel to do so. But there are private sector, third party custodian banks and depositories that have the capacity, that have the tools and the resource and the personnel to come in and be an auditor to make sure the exchanges are safe and safeguarded. We're not mandating it, but we're outlining some of the ideas for us to look at in the coming years. Well, this space is it's extremely difficult and different than any other kind of space that we've encountered before. In light of what's going on with social media and, I think everyone saw the oversight hearing of Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook on the Senate hearing. We're facing a whole different world where the Web 2.0, where our identity, individual identity, was being sold for companies like Facebook and Twitter and other social media companies to profit from. Now we're entering a new deal, of internet, and that's what blockchain offers. And it's a whole new world that regulators. I bring up the hearing because even in the oversight hearing, we have some of the smartest analysts in the political world and highest level political figures, U.S. senators, still don't know how Facebook works. Based on the questions that they're asking, they couldn't figure out how it's been monetized. So imagine if they're trying to wrap their head around with blockchain, right? It's a few notches up on social media, so it's gonna take a while for the rest of the world to catch up, especially people who are empowered to regulate them. And I think that's why the sandbox approach is the most fair and productive way to approach this. Otherwise, we're just demonizing and vilifying the industry without even realizing what they potentially can achieve for the world. Yeah, I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction of people when they're not familiar with the new technology or product, and oftentimes they just want to ban it, right? That's the immediate reaction of regulators because they can't understand it and they only hear of the worst case scenarios. And oftentimes I think many politicians, when they hear the word crypto, they associate, people want to do illegal stuff. People want to launder money. People want to go fund terrorist attacks, or that's immediately how political figures and regulators think. And if terrorists want to use crypto to fund their product, it's going to be. I can't even see. I think they have better luck and they're doing that kind of activity, selling art, than getting into crypto because of how complex it is to be going into that field. And I think the approach that we're taking, an approach that the community of blockchain entrepreneurs are taking, naturally roots out the bad players. For example, there are self-regulating tokens that's been introduced to make sure that within the community, the bad operators are rooted out. People are constantly trying to standardize ICOs, within the community of blockchains. So I think, all we have to do is work with the community, and learn and figure out a long-term solution in the next couple of years and look at what other countries have done, that have invested a lot of energy, like Singapore and London. And the whole premise of blockchain is to decentralize our powers by offering a technology that truly monitors and audits and checks and balances our system from the ground up, from the bottom up. So when you take a very top-down regulatory approach, I think it has the opposite impact of what the community is trying to achieve. So one way I think we can try to approach this is perhaps explore a city-to-city, municipal-to-municipal partnership. So kind of like a safe zone, like a blockchain economic zone between New York City, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, where people can really have the framework the global framework to offer a bottom-up approach of maximizing the impact of blockchain. And the reason why the federal government has come up with so many different definitions, because there is no one best case, use case of cryptocurrency. It really depends on, right now it depends on the consumer and the investor, how they approach it. I personally view many of tokens as utility tokens, and that's what I'm drawn to. I think we could have a global impact if we focus on creating a token economy for various utilities, and which is also asset backed by different functionalities. And I think that's the reason why Goldman Sachs and NASDAQ and various mainstream banks are trying to get into this field, because there's a whole new world of a token economy that people can get into that redefines some of the different financial assets that have been conventionally put in. It's understandable why places like Wyoming and even Arizona, they've taken a very aggressive approach to draw in the cryptocurrency community, because the natural place where people want to go to when anything that involves finance or fintech is New York City. This is still the capital, the financial capital of the world. And that's also our biggest Achilles heel, because we feel emboldened and almost presumptuous that people want to come here. We don't really take an aggressive, proactive approach toward drawing the next wave of entrepreneurs, thinking that, oh, well, you want to come here anyway, so we can take a complacent approach and you still want to come here. That's not happening anymore not only with fintech, but even with private equity funds, traditional banks. They don't need to stay in New York City anymore. They can easily go to New Jersey. They can easily go down to Delaware, the Rockies. You don't need to be in New York City. So that's the main message that I'm trying to bring to our regulators, that unless we rethink the way we approach entrepreneurism, we're going to be losing all these companies to not only other states, but other countries.
Have you started drafting any policy memo or proposal to the State Assembly to include the blockchain technology into the future governmental agencies or state legislative framework to promote this technology, to make the people's working way more efficiently in the future?
That's a very good question, and we're currently working on a long-term project with a couple of partners in the blockchain community on a pretty extensive white paper that will really just take a global to local perspective on the impact of blockchain, and how we can define government performance, how we can redefine everything we do from municipal bonds to registering voters. I think it would really be the backbone of our democratic values. Now, right, there's a reason why places like China has investing over billions of dollars the last couple of months in blockchain technology. They understand the value of using the technology to really check validate and verify the endless of data they have in the rural economies. And their biggest, I think, weakness is bringing the agriculture and rural economy into 21st century and including them into the ecosystem there. So blockchain offers that kind of solution for them, but it also kind of bypasses, I think, potentially bypasses our biggest strength of a democracy. So in other words, China can adopt the best of democratic values to blockchain without being democratic, and that's for me, that's my theory at least, and for us as a country that was founded upon checks and balances and democratic values, it'd be very ironic that if we lose this race to China. So that's why I feel even more passionate and compelled as a New Yorker and for this state to lead the way in showing that blockchain really is the long-term solution to uphold our democratic values in this nation.